Guys, today we're going to take a look at the brand new Geprc Ultra Long Range Moz7 long range drone. 7.5 inch, 6S, GPS, O3, all the bells and whistles. Welcome back to the channel, guys. If you want to see more long range type videos, this is the channel, so make sure you subscribe. Today, I'm excited because Geprc has been planning this behind the scenes for some time. They've been working on this brand new line of long range, high end, sort of high quality type of long range drones for you. So 7.5 inch today, the first of this series. They're calling it their Starship series. It is kind of inspired by Star Wars, which is kind of cool. When I took this out of the box, I did notice right away that it has a whole different look than the Crocodile 7. We have sort of this H dead cat style frame on here. It has removable side plates on the side, but they also act as heat sink for the O3 in the back or whatever VTX you're running. The motors on here are 2809, 1280 kV, and those are the first things that I noticed. They looked super nice, super industrial looking, a little bit different than what I've seen them release in the past, but they are the SpeedX branded motors. So I have seen that company before, but I love the bells on here. Look, kind of a nice little red anodized aluminum top plates, super nice thick copper coils on here. We have dual antennas coming off the back. We have a recessed XT60. We have M80 GPS on the back as well. And we have 6mm replaceable arms. But let's go out and fly this one. I'll give you a little comparison on the bench when we get back from the flight test of this one and something like the Crocodile75 that just came out also. But here it is, guys. It's finally in my hands, what I call the Moz7 or Moz7. Here we go. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this Moz7 flight test. We're doing it today in some big wide open fields, and this is really where you want to go to just enjoy a 7.5 inch or a 7-inch quad, or even something like an XL10. This drone, it didn't surprise me that it does fly smooth, predictable. I always tell people that a 7-inch flies a lot like an RC glider. It's kind of the glider of quadcopters. Once you get up to this scale and this size, everything smooths out really nicely as long as you have a good flight controller in here. So the Span F7 is doing its job today. This is the stock tune on here from Geprc, and it really is epic. It's as epic as this music sounds. I swear to God, if you've never gone out there and done some range flying, some exploring, and just kind of working on those cinematic turns and lines that you can get out there, some of the stuff you can come home with is kind of freaking amazing and almost like Lord of the Rings epic. I love long range and scenic style filming, and this type of filming around these type of trees, like it just blows me away. Out here in the vineyards, it's absolutely gorgeous today. It's the perfect weather to be flying. There's hardly any wind, and I can totally see with this HD system. And what's interesting is, like, you know, people ask me, like, I was just talking to somebody today about what should you fly on a 7-inch? What's more reliable, analog or HD? Now, in my opinion, you can go pretty far out on analog, and I feel like it's going to be more reliable on you as far as running something that's recording 4K like the O3 and having something that's going to be reliable. I feel like analog is more reliable for range flying, but if you want experience, the best experience for me is HD, because it just freaking looks gorgeous, and I love the feeling of flying and being able to see the fine details as I'm like just kind of flying over these trees like I'm a bird soaring through the air. It's just so much fun and so epic, I can't explain it. I would definitely grab one of the 8,000 packs, because I've been getting the best flights 25 minutes plus with the 8,000 packs on this quad. So let's go back to the bench now on the review. Okay guys, let's get into this review. Let's talk about this. This is a brand new release from Geprc. They're coining it as their ultra long range drone with a more industrial purpose. It does appear to have Cinelifter style motors on there with much thicker copper coils than we see on the Geprc Crocodile75 V. So we're going to give a little comparison today, as always on the channel in these reviews. I like to try to give a little comparison if you're trying to comparison shop to which one you want to buy. If you want a 7.5-inch quad, this is probably a great idea if you're going to put Crossfire on here or ELRS and do some range flying. This is a lot of fun because it can be configured a few different ways. It has a 19mm slot for that type of camera or a 20mm setup for the O3. So we can also get it in 4 different flavors. We can get the frame only if you want to build your own. You can also get an O3 version, which is the one I have here, or you can get the HD Wasp edition, which is pretty cool. So you can also, if you want to go old school, you can make this one analog. You know, you can crank it up to 2 watt. I've seen even like 4 or 5 watt VTX transmitters for analog, and only God knows how far you could go with that. But you can also put a GoPro on this one. I like to record O3. I don't like to fly GoPro when I'm flying long range because it cuts the time down. So my battery time right now without a GoPro, I can get up to 30 minutes flight time with the 8000 series pack that Geprc just released. So I will be testing that up coming up on the channel. I'll put a link down below in the video for that. iFlight also has a full send version, which we tested today as well. I'm able to get close to 30 minutes out of that pack. Now, one of the reasons is because we have 2809 series motors on here, and those are 1280 kV. And we're going to get into that more specifically coming up in this review. But for the purists out there that fly long range, a lot of those guys aren't really flying with the GoPro because we're not doing cinematics type stuff. We're just flying to enjoy, and that's the purpose of range flying. Just to get out there and explore, go up canyons, the mountains, and dip down into the valleys, over the rivers. It's a ton of fun. And depending on where you live in the world, will dictate the type of scenery that you come back with. So it's super cool because we do have internal storage on the O3 as well. Most of you guys know that if you've already kind of gotten into FPV. It also has SD card support as well, but we're finding that certain cards are giving some stutter, so you want to watch out for that. Try to go with an ultra high speed extreme SanDisk style card and you'll get less stutter to your SD card. So as the summer approaches and we get more hot temperatures, probably going to get more starting in your O3 video because of how hot the O3 gets. If it cools down, you're going to get a better frame rate. The hotter it gets, well, you're going to have some stutter in your video, so watch out for that. Now let's take a look at the specs on this quad. We have an H-style frame that they're calling it, sort of a dead cat style. I did see some kind of glare on the front of the lens, so you want to probably use some type of ND filter to avoid that type of glare on real sunny days. Maybe it was from reflection coming back from this propeller, but I did see that in the video, so you go back and watch that. You'll see some kind of weird light lines in the video, and that's directly due to some reflection from the sun coming in front of that camera lens. So a little bit of ND filter and you're probably going to be able to avoid that. Now this frame right here, the dimensions are 280 millimeter by 310 millimeter. The wheelbase is 320 millimeters, and it does have replaceable arms, which we talked about before. It has a 3 millimeter top plate on here with around 8 bolts to remove this top plate. It's pretty easy to get to the stack in the center in the O3. On the bottom we have 3 mil bottom plate, and we have 6 millimeter replaceable arms on this quad as well. So pretty standard for a 7.5-inch to 7-inch drone. If we look at it from the side, you can see these side plates. They are removable and they are separate pieces. You also have a VTX cover here with a trapdoor, which is kind of cool. They put kind of a little tab right here on this side, as you can see, and then a 2 mil bolt right here. So once you take this off, you have full access to the O3 in there, the SD card support, and the USB-C port. On this side, if you remove this side, you'll be able to get to the bind button on this to bind it up to your goggles or say your DJI transmitter if you're flying that. Up front here, we do have a dust cover as well. So this is kind of cool and new to me. I've never seen this on any of the Geprc drones before, but this little Dutch hatch right here, dust hatch, if we pull this back,
and it will give us access to the F7 flight controller. And this is an F7 span flight controller running around 50 amp ESCs for up to 6S battery packs. And up front, they also have aircraft aluminum side plates for protecting this O3 camera. If you look from the side, it has pretty good protection, just a little bit of the top and bottom sticking out there for the sun glare hatch on that camera. Up top, you can see here, there's a little bit of protection here and along the top here. And this also came in the box. This full-size GoPro mount came. Also underneath it, there's a carbon plate that installs on here. So if you push that down, you can install it. They also have longer 3mm bolts that go through the top of this and secure it down to the quad, which was kind of nice. I felt like the bolts that came with it that were originally on here on the frame were a little too short. They were a little bit loose, so I would probably check those out if I were you to make sure you don't have too short bolts. But all along this frame, we also have recessed hardware. Most of the quads these days, most of the nicer ones, they do come with recessed hardware, mainly because you don't want this hardware rubbing on your battery. We've had fires before on certain quads that have had hardware rubbing on the battery, kind of almost rub through the battery and cause a big problem. So we also have a 3M sticky bed here for the battery, and you can get up to about a 6,000 milliamp battery on this beast, and you should be able to get around 30 minutes flight time without a GoPro. With the GoPro, they're saying around 20-minute flight time with a 6,000 pack. So that's quite a bit of range and time to fly. And Geprc gives you a good amount of accessories, just like all the other bind and flies out there. They give you a huge bag full of stuff here. You get extra Allen wrenches, you get a carbon fiber keychain, you get a motor wrench, which is not quite that usable, but you get some extra hardware in here for the GoPro mount and some extra 3M battery bed sticker in there, and you get two sizes of straps, 20x300s, which I use on my larger 5,000 size packs, or the 8,000 pack that's going to fit with the 300. If you're going a little bit smaller, something like 3,000, you can use the 20x250 straps that come in the box. Now also along the arms, we do have motor wire covers, as to be expected these days, and TPU bottom motor bumpers to protect the arms when you're coming in on a landing. These drones can be quite heavy, so it's nice they have that so you don't tear up your carbon arms. They do have a little bit of a space here for impact as well to kind of protect the motor, give a little crumple zone. And this motor, this is where it gets really, really nice. These are 2809 series motors, 1280 kV, so they are lower than 1300K, which I really like. I've seen other drones coming out in 7.5 inch with say something like 1350 or 1400, and when you get close to 2000, it's more of a Freestyle 7-inch, really, in my opinion, on 6S than say 1200 kV. 1250 is nice, and I like to see 1250, but I can settle for 1280. And I have to say, these motors out of the box, that was the first thing that I noticed, was how sexy these motors are. They look super cool. I love the kind of red anodized aluminum across the top plate, and this bell looks really nice. And again, these are SpeedX branded motors from Geprc. So now I'm giving you a little bit of a bird's eye view of that motor and this super sexy HQ prop. I do like these. They have kind of a medium cord to a thin taper tip out here. Almost reminds me of like an airplane propeller. It's kind of beastie. These are the DP 7.5x3 propellers as well, so they're not super high pitch, but it gives you enough width in the mid cord to be able to give you kind of a good boost over trees. If you're coming up on a tree line and you need that extra throttle, with the weight of this battery on there, something like an 8,000 milliamp Lion, you don't have a high throttle boost with that. That is going to give you a little bit of extra power when you need it coming up on those trees, especially out here in Oregon. And now you're looking at the back of the Moz7, and it is a stationary setup. There's no hinges here to be able to tilt this under or over, which is kind of cool. It just stays right in its position, and it's pretty thick and extra durable back here. It's a little thicker than what I've seen on other type of 7-inch quad setups. So we also have diversity back here with dual antennas. We have our XT60, and I like that when I took the top plate off, I noticed there was another little device back here underneath this connector, and that's the anti-spark filter that they incorporated in it, which will actually kind of give you more life for your quad. It'll damage your components a little less, giving you that anti-spark option is really nice. We also have the M8 GPS back there as well, and I was getting like 22 satellites on that, and I think that it probably made a lock within around a minute. Once I set it down, turned it on, there's not a lot of clouds in the sky today, but I was impressed standing there, and all of a sudden I heard that triple beep, 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 and I had a lock and I was ready for takeoff. Now let's take a look inside the Moz7. Let me show you what's under the hood. This is the interior of this fuselage, and it has quite a bit of room inside here. I love how much extra space there is in here. The first thing I'm going to recommend you guys do is get an external beeper, because this one does have a built-in beeper and right here, and it does seem to have everything TPU mounted in place as well. So we're going to get into that as well. But the reason you want to use an external beeper is because if this crashes, this large battery will fly off the 8,000 size pack. You'll have quite a spectacular crash, and then you will have no way to have this beeper powered. So if you use an external beeper, that way you can put it somewhere inside this frame. There's plenty of room in here for one of those. That way, if you do crash like that, your battery comes off, it'll beep for about 2 days, which is super, super nice. Now there's plenty of room up front for that. I have my TBS Crossfire Nano right here and my Immortal T running out the sides of the quad, as well as they have a little TPU kind of placed for an RX here if you want to give it more protection. It's hard to see because it's black, but they have TPU everything mounted along this fuselage, which is nice. Even the filter back here is TPU mounted in a vertical fashion. Keep it from touching anything electronic in here. Back here where the O3 sits, you also have a platform that it's raised up on, and it also has some kind of aluminum kind of heat sink underneath here. It has fins on the very bottom of it, helping with heat dissipation out the back of the quad as you're flying. And all of this has extra venting for airflow to come through. Now right dead center of the quad right here, maybe just a little far forward, we have the F722 HD BT version 2 flight controller, and that is Bluetooth compatible, so you can go on your phone and make changes on this flight controller on the fly. We also have underneath that its own 4-in-1 50 amp ESCs for running 6S on this quad. And if we look all the way to the back here, there's a ton of space that you could have extra components in here as well. You'll see that these VBAT batteries wires come up right there, and they solder down to the anti-spark filter setup in here, so that's pretty nice. But I love how much extra room in here there is. It's like its own little supercar, but it has a huge trunk. So far, that's kind of my favorite things about the Moz7 that I've come across since I've had it. I was just getting it in like a couple days ago, and I have flown a couple packs through there so far. I do like the 8,000 size pack. If you're going to maybe freestyle a 7.5 inch, you probably want to fly a LiPo. If you're going to do long range, you want to do a Lion type of setup. These batteries are around $100, but they're absolutely worth it because you're going to get the best flight time out of these. They also have an analog setup for this quad that they're offering, which I mentioned before. That's around $400. You can get the Geprc brand new VTX on there. That's called the RAD 5.8, and that will do up to like 1.6 watts. So that will go way out there. That's pretty cool. And we also have an option to run a little bit smaller battery, something like a 6S 3000. You're probably going to get 15 minutes flight time out of that. But I recommend going big if you're going to do any type of range flying. Put the biggest battery you can get away with on there. Probably about 8,000 milliamp is the biggest I would go before you start running into weight issues. And that all has to do with physics. So don't try to beat physics, it'll beat you. But the weight on this, speaking of weight, the DJI 03 version, as it sits, is 700.5 grams. The Link Wasp version, 638 grams. And the analog version comes in at 675.5 grams. So I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for this part of the review. This is the comparison between the Croc 5 and the Moz7. You know, right away we have some kind of big differences here and some subtle changes as far as this frame goes versus the Croc 5. Now, right up front, right away we have aluminum side plate walls here for the 03, and up here this is an entire TPU assembly. So this is floating on TPU assembly, whereas this one has built-in kind of more rigid, almost like diatone style front end on this one, and kind of a more compact head design. This one's much larger up front. And you notice right away that the Croc 7 has a kind of more forward swept front arms. And so some people are reporting that they're seeing some props in the view. And some of you guys that are using this for cinema don't want to see that. So you're going to have to crop those props out of your view for any type of cinema footage. So if you're using a GoPro, you can also see them in super view with this quad as well. So you're going to have to kind of go back to wide mode, and then you won't see the props in view. And also give it a little bit of 30-degree tilt to kind of get it out of that prop area. Now this one also doesn't have the honeycomb venting that this one has. I like the honeycomb venting across the top because it gives all the components a little bit more airflow through the fuselage. Up here we have kind of a bevel down, but they give you kind of more protection there from a topwards crash. So if you have a head smack down crash, there's not going to be sticks and stuff coming through here, whereas this one might get a stick poking through, maybe damaging the inside of your components. So so many factors to think about back here. So we also have kind of a smoothed out back end on here on the Moz7 as well, where this one sticks up much further. This one is a little more simplified and smaller. So it's smaller designed back here versus a lot of different stuff going on back here. But we also have a non-tiltable GPS back here. It looks like the same type of GPS that M8. And this is kind of a stationary design here, as well as for top to bottom mount antennas, where this one has side to side. And I mentioned this, I like the side to side better for long range, but I haven't really honestly gone that far to really notice it. The only place you're going to really notice is for penetration around big tall trees and things like that. If you're flying around evergreens like Oregon and the mountains and things like that, you can kind of momentarily see some pixelization when you go around the backside of trees and things. So something to look out for. But on the bottom here, looking at the bottom of both of these quads, just flip the Croc 7 over as well. Quite a bit more carbon, it looks like, on the bottom of the Croc 7 V. Much more width here. It has a 3mm bottom plate covering up those arms, and everything has kind of been shrunk in here and brought to be a little smaller and lighter design. So they've streamlined a lot of stuff on the Moz7 versus the Croc 7 V. Just seems to be like full, large, extra big components and hardware. Everything on here is a little bit beastier, it seems, but this is where the sweet spot of the Moz7 to me is the power system on here. I love the motors. Are more industrial than what we see on this one. So these are 2806.5, 1350 kV. So this is going to give you probably a little less flight time, but I'm going to have to compare both of these on the same battery. So we'll try out the 6S 8000 pack on both of these on the same day and see what kind of flight time I can get for both of these, maximum flight time. If you like 7-inch, you like 10-inch, you like long range FPV, please do subscribe on the channel and check out our links, support the channel. If you're going to get a Moz7, please use my link. It will definitely give us a kickback for that. So I appreciate you guys watching and subscribing and finding out what's new in FPV. Guys, take care. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one.